Hi there and welcome to the video lesson for 1-4. The goal today is I can identify the properties of real numbers. Go ahead and open up your notes packet to lesson 1-4. We're going to be looking at addition and multiplication properties today. First of all, you're going to see the question, what is a property? Well, a property is just simply a rule that we always follow in math. And the four properties we're going to look at today in this video are the zero property, identity property, the commutative property, and associative property. All right, let's begin with zero property. The zero property we're going to talk about is of multiplication. It just states that the product of any number and zero is always zero. So you multiply zero to any number and you will always get zero is what this property is saying. Again, it's just a rule in math. So you can write down any of these examples in your notes for the zero property. Okay, next we have identity property. The identity property is true for addition and multiplication. For addition, the identity property just states that if you add 0 to any number, the number's identity will not change. So if you take 3 and add 0, you will still get 3. The same identity of the number, it doesn't change. Just like when you look in the mirror, you see your own identity, it doesn't change. We also have the identity property of multiplication. So think about what would you multiply by that will make the number not change, and that would be 1. Multiply any number by 1 and the number will not change. So if we take 5 and multiply by 1, the answer is 5. The number's identity doesn't change. Okay, that brings us to commutative property. To commute, it just means to travel back and forth. Like you commute back and forth, between home and school every day. So the commutative property for addition just states that it doesn't matter what order you add the numbers, you'll always get the same answer. So if you add 6 plus 4, it will be the same answer as 4 plus 6. You can commute the numbers. You can move the numbers back and forth, and the answer will remain the same. This is true for multiplication also. It doesn't matter what order you multiply the numbers, you'll always get the same answer. So you could take 4 times 6, and it would be the same as 6 times 4. Okay, so that's the commutative property or the commutative rule. It's true for addition and multiplication, but notice how it wouldn't be true for subtraction and division. Okay. Then that brings us to associative property. If you think about associative property, you hear the word associate in there, and when you associate with groups of people, you have different groups of people that you associate with in your life, and that could be different groups of friends. So the associative property just states that when you change the grouping of the numbers you add, it does not change the answer. So if I was going to add 2 plus 3 plus 4, I could group the 2 and the 3 together first and add those, or I could group the 3 and the 4 together first and add those. Notice that no matter which way I group the numbers, the answer is still going to be 9. Okay, so I can show grouping with parentheses. We also have associative property of multiplication, because as you know, changing the grouping of the numbers that you multiply is not going to change the answer either. So if I'm taking 2 times 3 times 4, I could group the 2 times 3 together first, or I could group the 3 times 4. See how I'm changing the grouping in the parentheses? But notice how it doesn't change the answer. The answer is still going to be 24. Okay, so associative property is all about grouping, changing grouping. All right, let's try some examples. You'll find these examples right in your notes. So what if I have 42 times 0, and that gives me 0? What property is that? Well, that would be the zero property, because anything times 0 would give you 0. On number 2, notice what's happening here. Look in the parentheses. The grouping is changing. And when we change grouping of numbers, when we're adding them together, that's the associative property. Number 3, what property states that if you take 10x and add 0, you get 10x back? You get the number's identity back. Identity property. I gave it away. Number 4, a square root of 46 times 5 is the same as 5 times the square root of 46. Notice the numbers just switched back and forth. I turned them back and forth. That's commute. Right? You can commute the numbers back and forth, and the answer remains the same. On number 5, 3t times 1 is equal to 3t. Well, do you notice that the number's identity is the same when you multiply by 1? And that is identity property. On number 6, notice the numbers were just reversed. And you can do this because of the commutative property. That's commutative property of addition. All right, let's take a look at one more. What property is illustrated here? Now notice how there's grouping symbols, but just because there's grouping symbols doesn't necessarily mean it's associative property. Did I change the grouping of the numbers? No, I still grouped 4 plus 6 together, but what changed? Ah, the order. 4 plus 6 was changed to 6 plus 4, and that's an example of commutative. Okay, so you can't always think that it's associative if you just see grouping symbols. It could be something else. You have to be very careful. Okay, so in your notes, go ahead and summarize what is the zero property, what is the identity property, and what is the commutative and associative property. See if you can summarize those 4 properties without looking back at your examples. Thank you for joining me for lesson 1-4 and have a great day.